I bet you've seen those historic images of cold, exhausted American soldiers fighting through the freezing mud of the European front. But while historians often focus on bullets, fuel, and heavy artillery, there was an invisible, psychological crisis threatening to break the army from within. In the winter of 1944, the morale of millions of troops was collapsing. The reason wasn't a tactical defeat on the battlefield, but something deeply personal, a total, crushing silence from home. Behind the front lines, a terrifying mountain of over 17 million letters and packages had accumulated in freezing, unlit hangars across Great Britain. Sacks of mail were piled to the rafters, rotting from dampness and overrun by rodents. Letters from worried mothers, wives, and children were completely trapped. For over 2 years, no one could solve this logistical nightmare. Army commanders knew that a soldier without news from home was a soldier losing the will to fight. The military needed a miracle, but instead of sending battle-hardened logisticians, they turned to a group of women whom society had consistently pushed into the shadows. They turned to the 6,888th Central Postal Battalion. This was the only all-black, all-female unit of the Women's Army Corps sent overseas during World War II. Led by the brilliant and fiercely determined Major Charity Adams, these women sailed across an ocean infested with German U-boats to fight a war that no one else could win, the war of words. Imagine stepping into a freezing, pitch-black hangar, looking at millions of misaddressed, damp letters, and being told you have exactly 6 months to sort them out, all while the survival of the front line depends on your speed. This wasn't just a desk job, it was a race against psychological warfare. But how did a group of women facing heavy segregation at home and skepticism abroad achieve the impossible in half the time? To understand the victory, we must look at what they did inside those dark warehouses. Visualizing the scale of their task is almost impossible. To meet the urgent deadline, Major Charity Adams organized her 855 women into 3 relentless, non-stop shifts, working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because the windows were blacked out to prevent targeting by German bombers, they worked in near-total darkness and freezing cold, wearing heavy winter coats inside the warehouses. They had no heating, no comfort, and a mountain of letters that seemed to grow every single day. The challenge wasn't just moving paper, it was solving a massive puzzle. Millions of letters were addressed simply to common names like Johnny, U.S. Army, or to soldiers who had been reassigned, wounded, or killed. The women of the 6,888 created a flawless tracking system, maintaining a card file of over 7 million individual records. They became detectives of morale, matching incomplete addresses to real soldiers under impossible conditions. They pushed forward under a singular powerful motto that kept them alive through the exhaustion: no mail, low morale. They knew they weren't just sorting paper, they were delivering hope, love, and the strength to survive to the men in the trenches. If a letter didn't leave their hangar, a soldier on the front line wouldn't know his child had been born or that his family was safe. This deep emotional connection turned a routine task into a sacred mission. The military high command gave them 6 months to clear the massive backlog in England. The women of the 6,888th did it in exactly 3 months. They shattered every logistical record in the history of the United States Army. When a white general tried to intimidate Major Adams by threatening to replace her with a white officer, she calmly replied, "Over my dead body, sir." Her discipline and the unmatched efficiency of her women silenced every critic on the continent. After conquering England, they were immediately deployed to Rouen, France, to clear another massive backlog of mail left behind after the D-Day landings. Here, the danger was even closer. They worked through the aftermath of bombings, dealt with shortages of food, and faced the heavy psychological toll of processing mail addressed to thousands of soldiers who had already died in combat. Yet they never stopped. Millions of letters kept moving because of them. When the war finally ended in victory, the women of the 6,888th Central Postal Battalion returned home to a deeply divided America. Unlike the male combat divisions, there were no massive ticker tape parades for them, no public celebrations, and no immediate recognition. They quietly transitioned back into civilian life, their historic morale-saving achievements buried under decades of systemic silence and institutional forgetfulness. But true heroism cannot be erased by time. For over 70 years, their story was kept alive only by their families and historians who refused to let them fade. Finally, in March of 2022, the United States Congress officially awarded the 6,888th Central Postal Battalion the Congressional Gold Medal. Though only a handful of these extraordinary women were still alive to hold the medal, their legacy as the unsung guardians of wartime morale was permanently etched into history. The heroes of the greatest generation fought in many different ways, some with rifles, some with art, and some with the power of words. If you believe the bravery and sacrifice of these incredible women deserve to be remembered by the world, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment to honor our veterans, and join us on our next journey through history. Thank you for watching the Greatest Generation Tales.